Today's video is sponsored by GMG Performance. Have you found yourself staring at screens all day lately? Well, at least I have, and especially now during quarantine, more than ever. As most of you know, too much screen time can give you headaches, eye strains, and even problems falling asleep. This is obviously because of the blue light that's emitted by screens. GMG Performance has a really stylish solution which helps you reduce eye strain, which in return will also improve your focus. I personally like these way better than any other blue light glasses I've worn before, especially since it doesn't have that yellow tint, and most importantly, they're super comfortable to wear. So, unlike other glasses, these actually don't hurt the side of my head when I'm wearing it for a long period of time with headphones, which is great, and they look good. I really genuinely recommend these, and you can grab your own pair of glasses by clicking on the link in the description below. You'll get 40% off. The special offer ends on Sunday, November 1st at 12 p.m. So go grab your own pair and I promise you'll be happy with your purchase. Hi. No, this is not a clickbait video, although I'm flattered you'd think I'd do something like that. No, I'm here to genuinely explain why I think Steve might be bottom 7 and possibly even the worst character in the game. At least right now, before any patching. Now, let me just say, I can understand that at low level, mid level, and even high level, this character might seem like a mid tier or even possibly high tier with all the potential that he has. However, at top level, where things like neutral, pressure, a strong advantage state, and consistency is valued the most, as well as close to mastered, Steve falls into the category of bottom tier. At least for me, in my opinion. But there's also plenty of reasons why I think he might be the worst character in the game. You just have to patiently hear me out and understand that I'm not here to slander or hate on the character. So there's no reason to get mad. First of all, his neutral is non-existent, and by far the worst neutral in the game, by a long shot. He barely has any kind of pressure whatsoever. His mobility is some of the worst in the game, having some of the slowest ground game, low air mobility, no projectiles, and has no range. So little range in fact that even a character such as Mario outranges him. His aggression is so terrible that most of the time he is forced mining and waiting for the opponent to make an obvious and rushed approach to get anything at all. And sometimes, even when the approach is obvious, there's nothing that can be done. At the same time, the majority of characters all have good pressure without needing to commit to a punishable approach. Hell, even an average character with below average pressure still completely outpressures Steve. And in a top competitive environment, there is almost nothing Steve can really do, meaning Steve cannot deal with any kind of good pressure, which in return also means that he has a terrible defensive game, making mining and everything else so much harder. His only way of truly pressuring a neutral is with landed pickaxe, forward air, and back air, but it has such low range that it'll be optimistic at best hitting shields with it. And even when you hit the move, which is optimistic to hit to begin with, you'll only get stray hits, no combos. And by the way, his pickaxe pressure in some matchups isn't even safe at all. You might think that down tilt is a good pressure move, but realistically you'll never hit this move in neutral, and even if you do hit a shield for whatever reason, every single character can simply jump out of it mid-shield pressure, and a ton of characters can punish Steve before he can act. Not to mention, it's extremely easy to jump over and hit Steve for using it at all. Now, because of his low range and mobility, there's actually no reason to even shield against Steve, almost ever. Instead, you can always dash out and in of burst range against Steve and be a threat. Or you'll be jumping and using safe landed aerials against him that outspace him. Or you'll be using projectiles that he just can't deal with. You basically don't ever have to approach Steve. You can always just stick without pressuring him and outranging him, or be a threat at that burst range where he can't react to whatever you might do, and has to instead now try to preemptively calling you out. Problem is, when he tries to call you out with pivot grab or aerials, it's whiff punishable. And if he calls you out with dash attack, it's just a stray hit. No combo, no real advantage state. Just some extra space to mine most of the time. Here's something important to understand at top level. Even if you get dash attacked 7 times by Steve during one stock, the damage you took is so minimal that it barely matters. Not being put into a horrible disadvantage state is much more important. Did you really win neutral if all you get is some minimal damage and a bit of time to mine for materials? No, not really. Not at top level at least. It is beyond underwhelming. On top of this, getting grabbed at above 30% won't be a big deal at all anymore. So, if dash attack is the only thing that you'll accept getting hit by, which isn't a big deal, because you refuse to get grabbed, down tilted, or hit by low range aerials, what's left? Up tilt? Too low range. Jab? Too low range. And especially if you know how to pressure shield correctly, Steve won't ever get his out of shield aerials to start anything either. And a lot of the time, even after parrying, he won't get anything started. If he tries, he gets punished. And even when he actually hits you with his out of shield aerial, the majority of the time it won't combo as you are spacing away from him anyway, so you DI away from the combo. So the only thing that is left is cart. Now at first, sure, the cart will be annoying since it's a new-ish mechanic that you'll have to understand how to counterplay, but once you do, you'll realize that the cart isn't that good to begin with. Not to mention, it's easily reactable and can be avoided pretty safely by jumping away from it, and Steve will still have trouble anti-airing you if you just space yourself correctly. And for some context, here's a short segment from the How to Steve explaining how you simply outplay the cart. Once you hit a shield while riding into an opponent, you can also jump off of it, which can let you catch the opponent as well. The counterplay could be to spot dodge right after, but there's still a chance that Steve can read this and punish this, and so the actual counterplay should always be to roll behind it as soon as it hits your shield, as there's nothing that can be done about it. When you hit a shield and then jump, you and the opponent will be able to act at the exact same frame. However, when Steve jumps, he will be stuck for 5 frames, as well as his air dodge comes out at frame 4 and his jab coming out at frame 3. So he's basically punishable for 8 to 9 frames when he does this. Just keep in mind that you won't be able to short hop buffer an aerial as it'll still catch you. But most characters will still be able to punish Steve for doing this if you just have a fast enough option. And it's not like this can be spammed as it costs a lot of resources, as well as Steve is generally vulnerable while riding it. Something else is that the minecart only has 7 HP and can be easily destroyed. At 0%, Steve will roughly have 15% heavy armor, but even at 40% he can already get hit by moves under 7% damage. If you just simply try jumping, you might get anti-aired, but obviously you could also jump away from it too, which should be just fine. So let's say you've gotten pretty good at the Steve matchup now, and almost never get hit by the cart. His aerials never really get to hit you, his out of shield options aren't punishing you because you've mastered your character's movement, spacing, and pressure, and his jab, up tilt and down tilt combo starters are even harder to hit. Then you're basically left playing against dash attack or random grabs, both punishable, easy to jump and wall out, and give low reward anyway, assuming you don't get grabbed at starting percents. Now you might be thinking, what about his up smash? It's a big and decent anti-air. But it's not. In fact, it's extremely committal, and if you know how to fast fall with neutral air dodge, which by the way is extremely rare for players below high level play to know about this option, then you'll easily get past it and hard punish Steve. Not to mention that some attacks even beat this move anyway. The only time you'll ever hit the up smash is against predictable jumps into you. In other words, rushed or careless approaches, which will almost never happen at top level play. If you think mining forces any kind of approaches from any character, then I'm sorry, but you're wrong. It doesn't and it won't, at least at top level, because I can imagine that anything below that level approaching, spacing, and pressuring is a bit of a rougher concept. So neutral is clearly the worst in the game. Now, you might say, but this is why he has to mine so that he becomes stronger. Well, sadly, half of the cast won't care, as they either have projectiles good enough, the speed and mobility, or the range to not let it happen. And even if you let it happen, Steve is going to get a somewhat better weapon and a stronger and faster minecart, which he'll barely be hitting with anyway. So, did he really get better? Not to mention that the weapons can break, and on top of this, the weapons go back to wood as soon as he dies, which most likely, as he's been trying to shake off the opponent with the cart and dash attack, and mine and create blocks to create some time and mine some more, he's most likely going to get the diamond sword when he's already at mid or high percents, as a low weight. So is it really worth it? And on top of this, Steve will most likely be cornering himself more than half of the time while setting up blocks and mining, so the risk of death is even bigger, and so you're putting yourself at a disadvantage immediately in a top level environment. The only way Steve actually wins interactions effectively is if the opponent mindlessly rushes to stop Steve from mining frantically, hitting blocks impatiently and forcing their way in. But there's no real reason to. The character's neutral and game plan at top level play becomes extremely flawed. You're supposed to set up blocks, mine, and keep the opponent out, but most characters can deal with blocks easily, not let you mine, nor craft in peace, nor can you hit them away to do any of it. Even if you manage, you're mining for essentially a minimal upgrade, if even at all. In neutral, no matter how you set up your blocks, you're essentially only stalling for the inevitable. I've personally even let the opponent mine and get everything they needed to see if it was any different if Steve didn't need to mine at all, nor think about managing his materials. And as it turns out, the character gets destroyed and outplayed almost equally as much, and as soon as he spends his carts and blocks and his iron because of down air and so on, eventually he still runs out of materials and inevitably dies, only to need to go back to setting up more blocks and mine. But oh wait, you need to hit the opponent first, which barely works, so it doesn't work at top level play. If you are basing how hard or easy matchups are based on how well they deal with blocks or TNT to prevent you from mining, then you're missing the big picture point. Now, in theory, creating blocks to prevent edgeguarding is really good, but in practice, Steve won't be abusing this as much or as effectively as theorized. Not only do you have to get rid of all of your dirt and wood blocks first, but even then it's a pain to get stone or iron, get the right launch angle, the right block placement, and a majority of characters have a way to work around it anyway. Sure, it might happen from time to time, but in other words, it's inconsistent. Going off stage with an aerial to edgeguard is most of the time going to be more consistent anyway. Now, you might be saying, but Izza, the character is complex and needs more time to develop. And yeah, you're right, he does need time, but it's not hard to tell pretty early on if a character has a capable playstyle. A character needs a strong, basic foundation. No character can purely rely on gimmicks, and most of the time, the biggest development that requires time is his combo game. But if he can't win neutral, then the character is still not going to benefit much. I've yet to mention this, but on top of his neutral being the worst in the game, his disadvantage state is also terrible. Not only is he a lightweight character for whatever reason and dies extremely early, but his supposedly flexible disadvantage state options aren't even that flexible, nor good. Blocks and disadvantage will barely help. It'll mix things up occasionally, but almost all characters can easily hit Steve creating a block and standing on it anywhere on stage. So most of the time creating a block and disadvantage is a big risk, and you're more than likely going to get hit, which you can't really afford being a low weight. His cart and up B are super vulnerable. There's almost no reason why it can on top of everything also be countered at the start of it, and even when at ledge, his ledge options are below average to make it back. Down air is decent at best in a few matchups, but most characters can beat it with their own attacks, or just dodge it and still catch him landing, so it's not a big deal unless you rush against him without needing to or being able to. Alright, so what is Steve's strength? Combos, scary looking ones too when seen in training mode, but they're all super specific, and they all start at close range. The worst part is that you can SDI all of the combos, which break them pretty heavily and is a big deal. His other potential strength is TNT at ledge, which honestly isn't that bad, but it's also a bit of a gamble, meaning it's somewhat inconsistent. What about his corner pressure? Well, because of his awful jump height and mobility, a majority of characters can recover high pretty safely, or just jump, double jump, and get around him and claim the middle. So to me, and many other players, this seems like he's kind of a low tier now, but there are more reasons as to why I think he might be the worst. His matchup spread seems to be the worst in the game. All the sword characters outrange him, as well as some are way faster than him. Close range fighters will usually have good mobility and pressure to outmaneuver him, and even projectiles, making some matchups almost unhittable. And projectile campers in general will be a pain to deal with, as they won't care what kind of upgrade you'll get after all the mining. Not only does a hero have a longer and better sword, his side special completely outranges Steve and goes through blocks, he has enough space to always get his level 3 neutral B, he gets to power up with any of his power-ups, use any of his spells almost whenever he wants. Bounce is a pain to deal with as you can't down air, TNT, down smash, down throw, and even minecart won't work. There's no way to deal with zoom, and with Accelerattle, he becomes the most mobile character in the game. Not to mention random crits that kill in one hit, so you're dealing with Armageddon. Min Min has superior mobility, plus the best range in the game, as well as she's faster overall. Outranges him, is safe against shield, and can keep him out with punches for days, as hitting a block and hitting Steve is as simple as mashing. There's no answer against her up B escape, her up smash reflects down air and cart, and punishes him out of shield even when he tries jumping out of it. And she has a tether recovery, so blocks are useless, but good luck ever hitting her anyway. And so on and so on. Almost all characters can take hard advantage of him if they just know the matchup and keep abusing his weaknesses. Basically, almost all characters in this game can outcamp Steve and move circles around him at top level if they just keep jumping and land with safe aerials into more jump away or dash away and patiently keep it up. If they get cornered, it won't be hard to get into the middle either, as Steve will have a hard time catching them anyway. And if they know the matchup and never get hit by the cart, Steve is locked to perfect shield gaming and dash attack mostly. It's sad to say, but this character will need some big buffs to be a good character at top level. Now again, at low level, mid level, potentially high level, I understand that you think there is potential and that he might be a mid tier, but not at top level for all of these reasons. Now, it doesn't mean that Steve won't be able to win a few games here and there in tournament, or even potentially have a good run once in a while. Luckily, this is Ultimate, not Brawl or Smash 4, and a bad character isn't completely unviable. A bad character is still pretty good, and even the worst character in this game can do decently. So yes, from time to time you'll see some amazing plays, and amazing players doing amazing things with Steve. This wasn't a video to hate on Steve, it was to express why this character needs buffs or a rework to actually be good. You can disagree with me all you want, but I won't be spending time arguing in the comments. But if you want to ask me genuine questions, however in a civil way, I'm open to answer any questions while I'm live on Twitch.